Hi, welcome to Shakti Shingara. This is the 5th episode of our Visha Vijñāna series. And today we're talking about, of course, hair dye. And our hair, it's our living expressive extension of our biology. It reflects internal health, vitality, and even the balance of our hormones. And today I want to take us beyond all the fear and confusion because I want to give full clarity and full empowerment to you. And in the session today, we're going to walk together through how your hair grows, right down to its tiniest components, how chemical dyes interact with our hair and our hair's health, and how the choices of our ancestors were far more sophisticated than what we are using today. And of course, we're going to cover the full set of natural, science-backed, ancient wisdom solutions that you can use to either maintain hair color beautifully, or even if you want to embrace gray gorgeously. And by the end, you will not only understand your hair care as chemistry, basics of chemistry and biology, but you'll understand how everything works. And if you want color that lasts, like really lasts, that strengthens your hair and doesn't strip it, let me show you how to grow your color. And if you remember nothing else from our chat today, I do hope you remember this: henna to build, indigo to deepen, and iron to hold the color true. Okay, so let's begin. We'll talk first about hair health and biology because that's always my favorite place to start. And before we talk about any external treatments, we do need to understand what hair health is and what is at the very basics of biology, at the root of things, quite literally at the root. If you do not know how your hair grows, how it lives, how it ages, then every decision you make, you're making blindly. So we need to understand that our hair is actually not even dead matter. It's always described that way. We hear people say, hair is just dead protein, but it's a very big misunderstanding because yes, the visible strand of hair is made of keratin, and it no longer receives a direct blood supply, but the living force of your hair exists beneath the surface, and it's in the follicle, and the follicle is very much alive, and it's an incredibly dynamic environment. So let's build a clear picture. The strand of hair that you see is composed of 3 main layers. The cuticle, which is the outermost layer, is made of overlapping cells like shingles on a roof, and when these lie flat, your hair looks smooth. It's shiny and healthy. Then you've got the cortex, which is the thickest layer, and it houses your natural pigments and gives hair its strength and elasticity. Then you've got the medulla, which is the innermost core, and it's found mostly in thicker hair types, but it depends on the integrity of all 3 layers. So the cuticle is your first line of defense. It protects against moisture loss, it shields you from UV damage, and prevents breakage. And when it's intact, your hair reflects light beautifully and it stays resilient. And the cortex, on the other hand, that's the heart of your hair structure. This is where the keratin proteins form tight bundles, and it gives you flexibility. It gives your hair flexibility and strength. And this is also where melanin pigments live, okay? And melanin pigments, they determine your natural hair color. So finally, you get the medulla. It's not present in every single strand. It contributes to the thickness and the structure of your hair. And none of this would matter without what happens beneath your scalp, because your hair follicle, it's a living organ in its own right. And you've got several key players in this system that are working tirelessly. So this is the dermal papilla, which supplies nutrients, oxygen, and hormonal signals. Yes, your hair has hormonal signals. And melanocytes, they produce melanin. That's the natural pigment that colors your hair. So keratinocytes create the keratin proteins that build the strand. And then sebaceous glands, they produce your sebum, which is your hair's natural conditioner. It's oil from your hair. And when your follicles are nourished and your body is balanced, you've got great diet and you're taking care of yourself, your hair grows strong. It's flexible. It's vibrant. Your hair growth also follows a cycle. The anagen phase, which is the active growth phase, and that can last years. And then you get the catagen phase, which is the transitionary phase, and that's where growth slows down. And then you get the telogen phase, and that's total rest. And that's where old strands shed and new ones start preparing to grow. And a healthy hair cycle is critical because the health of your hair today, it's a reflection of your body's condition over the past few months. So hormonal shifts, nutritional deficiencies, stress, inflammation, These can all influence the cycle. So now let's talk about porosity, because porosity refers to your hair's ability to absorb and retain moisture and nutrients. High porosity hair absorbs very quickly, but it also loses moisture rapidly. Low porosity hair, it resists absorption but holds onto moisture, and it holds onto moisture very well when it's nourished. Gray hair is naturally more porous. As melanocytes slow down and pigment production decreases, the protective quality of the cuticle, that also decreases. This is why gray hair often feels more coarse, more wiry. That's how it's described often. It's more absorbent, but it's less sealed. So different hair types respond to treatments very differently. Straight hair distributes oil very evenly, but damage shows super quick as dullness, and as you can see on my hair, because I have straight hair, split ends. Wavy hair can become frizzy when the cuticle is damaged. Curly and coily hair, which is naturally more porous, it craves a lot of moisture, and it's prone to more breakage if it's not handled very, very gently. And finally, your scalp. Your scalp is a living tissue. It's rich, super rich with blood vessels. There's a whole delicate ecosystem of beneficial microbes there. These microbes support immune function, and they maintain the pH of your skin and hair. And when your scalp is healthy, your hair thrives. When it's inflamed or imbalanced, your hair super suffers. So now you see, hair is not just an accessory of beauty, it's like an entire living extension of what your internal health looks like. And knowing this is going to give you power. It's going to give you power to choose beauty routines that nourish, and it gives you the ability to see signs of imbalance in the body. And with that power, you can respect the integrity of this whole body biological system. And, you know, with that understanding, let's continue with the talk, because you'll see it differently now. Because every chemical process we're about to discuss interacts with these natural living systems of our biology. And every natural alternative we'll explore, it works in partnership with them. So before we begin to all the fun stuff, because I know you're excited just to probably learn how to make your own hair color at home, I want to take just 2 minutes to expose the big beauty industry. And that infrastructure that normalized the chemicals that hair dye is built on, that whole global business model that is, surviving on permanent follicle damage on our heads. So it began actually with L'Oreal, Clairol, Schwarzkopf, and Revlon. They're the primary corporations that are responsible for bringing industrial hair dye to women worldwide. In 1907, Eugene Schuller, the founder of L'Oreal, he launched the first synthetic dye using paraphenyl diamine, PPD. It's a coal tar derivative. And in 1939, Clairol launched its first mass market home detergent to strip the scalp and dye the hair. By 1956, Clairol had a massive campaign for hair dye mainstream, did she or didn't she, calling it hygiene. They moved the perception from just vanity to coloring your hair as hygiene. By the 1980s, Revlon and Schwarzkopf had given us aggressive home kits that had really high ammonia systems. And the cycle included a synthetic shampoo that stripped the scalp's microbiome, an oil balance, and then ammonia and MEA, which are, they chemically break the hair shaft. By the way, MEA, which is monoethanolamine, it's a synthetic chemical compound made by reacting two petrochemical derivatives. The first one is ethylene oxide, which is a carcinogenic gas, and it's derived from crude oil. And then the second one is ammonia, and it's industrial grade, and they react the two together. So when they tell you it's ammonia free, but it's got MEA, it's got ammonia just in a different form. Then you get the silicone gel conditioners that seal in the damage and hide all the breakage. And the silicones are usually dimethicone or amodimethicone, and they form a plastic-like coating around the entire hair shaft. And that coating just fills in any gaps, smooths over the cuticle, and gives an illusion of shine. Let me repeat, it's an illusion of softness, because underneath the structural damage is there. And you've got protein loss, you've got higher porosity, a lot of breakage. It's just masked. It's not repaired by their conditioner at all. The brands did not remove the harm. They added secondary products to manage the visible fallout. Okay, each stage created a dependency. So you get oil loss, which leads to dryness, and then you need a moisture repair range. You have follicle damage, which gives you shedding. Now you need a growth serum. You get color fade, so now you need root touch-up. Very clever marketing. At no stage were women ever given full disclosure on PPD's systemic absorption into the body. Resorcinol, which is a hormone disrupting property, peroxidase oxidizes the keratin, MEA impacts your cellular mitochondria in the scalp. Most of these chemicals are now restricted or banned in the EU, but they are fully legal as of today in the US and India. And where other export markets, where these corporations are dominating sales, they're selling them. The goal for big beauty corporates was not safety or beauty at all. It was just repeat use, high margins, global saturation, and that's how the global hair dye industry has now reached over 30 billion USD annually. Okay, and they're supported by marketing that frames chemical intervention as routine care. You got to touch up every 2 weeks. And there's no mention of how long-term follicular degradation happens, no mention of the impact on your thyroid, on your reproductive ability, on placental permeability. Yes, mamas, you want to know that one. It goes through your placenta. And it happens on a monthly basis as you retouch. And it has been extremely profitable for these companies. So let's talk about what happens when you do color your hair using these conventional chemical dyes. Your natural hair color is formed by melanin, okay? Specifically eumelanin for black and brown shades and pheomelanin for reds and yellows. These pigments sit safely inside the cortex of your hair strand, and it's shielded by the cuticle, okay? To alter the natural pigment, chemical dyes first need to break through that cuticle barrier. This is done using alkaline agents, something that's very basic, okay? Because the natural pH up here is 4.5 to 5.5. So they use an alkaline agent, traditionally ammonia. Ammonia raises the pH of the hair. It causes the cuticle layers to swell and lift. So remember how we were talking about it being shingles of a roof? They swell and lift. And then your hair, if you imagine it as a rope with the protective outer sheath, the ammonia forces that sheath open, and it makes the delicate internal fibers of your hair exposed. And some brands today that advertise ammonia-free dyes that are using alternatives like MEA, as I've told you a couple minutes earlier, replacement chemicals work exactly the same way. They're raising the pH, they swell the cuticle, they create more porosity, they make it more porous, and then once the cuticle is open, hydrogen peroxide sweeps in. And the role of hydrogen peroxide is to bleach your natural melanin, clearing a canvas. It sounds so artistic, doesn't it? For artificial pigment. But peroxide doesn't just stop at color removal, because it also reacts with the keratin in your hair, and it oxidizes and weakens the entire structure that holds your strand together. And after your neutral pigment is stripped away, the synthetic color precursors come into play. So compounds like PPD, paraphenyl and paratolenediamine, PTD, they're small enough to enter inside that opened hair shaft, but inside the cortex, they react with the hydrogen peroxide, and then they form large molecules, okay? And once these large molecules form, they're way too big to escape. They're just too large. And so that's what creates what we know as permanent color. So these dye molecules get into the shaft and they expand and they can't escape. On the surface level, it looks like a success because your hair has changed color. But let's pause here for a quick second, because what you've done is just swollen the cuticle and left it open. And you've oxidized the internal natural proteins, and you've weakened the strand. And you've chemically flooded the entire cortex with artificial pigment. And you've triggered secondary reactions now too. So the chemical process of dyeing your hair creates unstable byproducts, reactive oxygen species, quinone diamines, and others. And these molecules are not just sitting quietly inside your hair, just behaving. Some of them escape, and they escape through heat. And some of them migrate into your scalp, especially with heat, pressure, microabrasions. So just brushing your hair. And this, as we will see, is how chemical hair dye goes beyond cosmetic change, and then it gets into your bloodstream and your endocrine system and your whole body. However, here's the great news. This does not have to be our only option, because if you stay with me, and we'll get into it now, we're going to explore how these chemical interactions impact the rest of the biology. But after that, we're going to, if you stay with me, talk about more nourishing color choices. and how you can replace color on your hair without having to go through this chemical restructuring of the hair. Okay, so first let's talk very briefly on just bodily impact. So we understand what happens within the structure of the hair. Okay, let's widen our lens and talk about how these processes extend past the hair shaft and hit the whole body. So we know our scalp is living, breathing skin, and it has some of the most rich blood flow in the entire body. The whole body, it's all reaches up into here because beneath the surface of the scalp is a dense network of blood vessels and over 100,000 hair follicles. Each follicle is not just producing hair, it's also a natural channel of absorption. So here's something people don't consider. It's that the scalp is more absorbent than even your forearms or your hands. And the warmth of your head increases blood circulation. And when you add moisture, heat, and chemical opening of the skin's barrier, absorption rates go up significantly. So if you apply chemical dyes, you're not just interacting with the hair strand, but the smaller unstable byproducts, they find their way into the skin. And before you even rinse your hair, those compounds are already in your bloodstream, and they have found metabolites of hair dye chemicals in the body's urine within just hours of applying hair dye. That tells us directly that the body is absorbing and metabolizing what we put on our hair. And resorcinol, it mimics hormonal messengers in the body. It interferes with thyroid hormones. Your thyroid is your metabolic powerhouse. It regulates energy, mood, weight. Disruption can lead to weight change, menstrual changes, and even a lot of mood disruption. Among tens of thousands of women tracked, women using permanent hair dye saw an increase in breast cancer risk, and especially colored women. Why? Because darker dye formulations have more concentrated levels of PPD. Beyond these cancer risks, there's also subtle wear and tear on the neurological system. So workers in hair salons and colorers, they often experience headaches and dizziness, just nervous system burden and chemical overload. And it also causes problems with conception because what touches your scalp crosses the placental barrier and it touches the baby. So the truth I want to emphasize is that your body is not helpless in this equation. It does self-clean, and it does get rid of a lot of the toxins that you do put in it. But the problem is that there's frequency and load. Every 2 weeks we're dyeing our hair. It's repeated use, and that's the pattern that they've designed for us to use. So it's continuous accumulation. Your body just can't keep getting rid of it if you keep putting it on every 2 weeks. It's cumulative exposure, and this is precisely why a shift to natural alternatives is really powerful. So once we break the cycle, we can actually start to support our body's renewal processes, and it will help you with your hormonal issues and weight burden. So you'll see how this happens very soon. But now let's look back, okay? We're going to turn to ancient wisdom that existed long before this crazy chemical age of blowing up your hair shaft and inserting chemical dyes, because our ancestors did not have lab coats or factories, and they were still able to color and care for their hair. They were formulating modern hair dyes by working with the body's own biology. And there were systems for restoring tone and preserving the strength and protecting the integrity of the hair, because ancient formulations focused on gradual transformation of the hair color. They supported the pigment, it closed the cuticle, and they nourished the root at the same time. So there's a hair darkening recipe, and it's step-by-step. So kodo millets, if you just finely powdered 2 tablespoons with fermented rice water, 4 to 5 tablespoons of that, and formed a thick paste. And then you got green banana leaves, either banana or turmeric leaves, and then some amla paste, which you could get fresh or from rehydrated powder, and you mix them until it was thick and spreadable, and you put it onto clean, oil-free hair from root to tip, and then you just wrapped with the greens to trap in heat and moisture, and you left it in for 6 hours. That was a toning and a blackening method over time. And it wasn't done by force, but it's a sequence. So you prepped the hair and then delivered the color and then sealed it. And there's another recipe that is an iron decoction recipe, and it's step by step. as well. You use bringraj, like 2 parts, amla 1 part, and neem 1 part, and water just to cover the herbs. And then you put it in an iron pot, and that's what brings on the color. And you combine those herbs and water in the iron pot, and you boiled it until it was reduced by half into a very thick decoction, and strained it while it was warm. And then again, apply it to clean, damp hair. Wrap it with leaves and leave it for 3 to 6 hours, and then rinse with plain water. You could repeat this use and strengthen the fiber, enrich the scalp, and darken the tone of your hair naturally through that iron ion infusion. Triphala, especially haritaki, was used for tannin content and pigment binding. Sesame oil sealed in the color. Charcoal ash, walnut husk, mango bark decoctions, those added tone, luster, shade variation. And these methods are very slow and deliberate. And the formulas really work because, fermented rice water, it introduces mild acidity. Lactic and acetic acids and live enzymes, they soften the cuticle without swelling them or breaking them open to damage. And that prepared the hair shaft to receive the color treatment without structurally degrading. And then the kodo millets, they provide the mucilage and the trace minerals. And the mucilage coats and smooths the hair shaft while acting as a delivery vehicle. So its starchy base enhances the pigment adhesion. And amla, which had high concentrations of tannins and vitamin C, they acted as natural fixatives, and they bound pigments and tightened the cuticle. So vitamin C enhances the scalp circulation, and then also the collagen production. And the iron vessels that you make these pastes in, they leach ferrous ions into the herbal decoctions. And these ions react with the tannins like in the tea, ones that create darker complexes that bond with keratin structure of the hair, and they produce a cumulative blackening effect. Herbs like bringraj, neem, haritaki, they provide pigment precursors, scalp stimulation, antifungal benefits, and they give you added tannins as well that support both color development and follicular health. So the result is not cosmetic staining, it is biochemical transformation through very sophisticated pH manipulation. And then you get metal ion catalysis and botanical protein binding. So it's chemistry. It's really sophisticated chemistry. So let's cover off the very simplest method, which you've probably heard of. It's the classical Mendi indigo method, henna and indigo. You likely know it, but maybe not in its full technical precision. Henna goes on first, indigo second, and you start by mixing the Mendi powder with an acidic liquid, for example, lemon juice, or if you've got a sensitive scalp, amla infused water, or black tea, which is what I use. That also works beautifully. And you mix it to a yogurt-like consistency. You just let the paste rest because the dye needs to release. And then you keep it covered for 6 to 8 hours. I leave mine overnight. That resting period allows more lawsone molecules to come out from the plant fibers into the paste. Then you apply the henna paste and you work it from root to end. And you wrap your hair to maintain warmth and moisture. And you let the Mendi sit and process for at least 4 to 6 hours. Then you rinse thoroughly with water, 0 shampoo. Do not touch with shampoo at this stage. The Mendi alone will give you a very warm, coppery orange tone, and it is very visible on gray strands. But it still is an improvement on white strands when you have just Mendi there. And then if you want to darken it to the same color that I have, like a dark brownish black, you add in step 2, which is indigo. And you prepare the indigo paste fresh, and it's the same consistency and texture as the Mendi. And you mix the indigo powder with warm water around body temperature to a yogurt-like paste, and then you let it sit for no more than 15 to 20 minutes because indigo, unlike Mendi, the dye releases more quickly and it also degrades quickly. Then you apply the indigo paste directly over the hennaed hair, and you wrap it and leave it for 2 to 4 hours for deepening. And you rinse it with water, and do not shampoo. Not natural shampoo, not chemical shampoo, just water. And you do that for at least 48 hours to get it to fully oxidize. And the result is a rich, dark color, and it's naturally glossy, and it's a very durable dye, so it sticks. It really stays on. With repeat applications, your hair fiber gets more and more colored, and it gets more and more strengthened and sealed. So if it's your first time trying this method after years of using chemical box dye, expect that you're going to have to do it 2 to 3 times before you start to see good results. What stands out in all of these methods is the intelligence of the sequencing. So if you follow the process step by step, and I'm going to put all 3 of the processes in the comment section below, you will start to see results. Don't be disheartened if the first time you don't see it work very well. The Indigo will require 48 hours to oxidize. So when you first rinse it out of your hair and you pull your hair apart like this in the mirror, you're still going to see that it's not got the full color. You want to wait the next 48 hours and then you'll see how dark it gets. Okay, so, studying these methods today through the lens of modern science, we can actually see how aligned it is with what they're trying to mimic now with the chemical versions, because you use acidity to open the cuticle very gently, and then you use heat and moisture to increase the pigment uptake, and then you've got tannins and acids that help the pigments to bond, and then the iron, which is so important, it catalyzes and darkens the plant colors. So I have used a couple of one-step processes. There is a company called Radico that make a one-step Mendi Indigo blend. And so you don't have to go through that 2-step process if you're in a rush. There's also some other companies, Indus Valley, Kadi Natural, Cultivators. They're available in Europe, the US, and in India. I suspect most of them are global because I was able to get mine on Amazon. But these companies are known for pH balancing formulations. So they take these plant powders and they micronize them into smaller, thinner, finer fibers, and they give more consistent application results because they're treating the indigo so that it releases at the same time as the Mendi does, okay? And they do it in just the right amounts. They use gentle acids like amla powder and citric acid to control the pH, and that helps both ingredients release color exactly the same time. So that eliminates the longer 2-step process. And I'm hoping to be speaking to the makers of one of these companies very shortly. I have reached out to them, so we'll be having a chat together to talk more about how they make it. And I used it, it worked great. It was perfect for me, and I was able to do it in 3 hours. And the color was great within about 6 hours. And it's a great natural method if that's where you want to start. So with our new understanding that we have now of hair biology and real plant chemistry, we can start to apply these methods very precisely and get to the hair color that we want. We just want to understand the foundation of that natural hair color and keep trying, keep at it. If you fail the first time, this is not like a chemical dye. It's okay. You can go at it again the next day or the next day and keep on building depth and richness over time. The more porous your hair is, which is often the case with gray hair, the more readily it's going to absorb the natural plant pigments. That's an advantage for you. So the natural treatments will work very beautifully on gray hair because of the porosity. So you can go through step by step this natural toolkit. So let's talk a little bit about how to structure your daily, weekly, and monthly care routines for your hair, because now you're not going to be touching that box to dye every 2 weeks. So whether you're embracing your natural color or just transitioning to gray or silver, let's build a quick roadmap. When you first leave the chemical dyes behind, one of the biggest questions I always get is, how can I structure my care routine now? What's the rhythm? And the beauty of the natural method is that there is no real strict demand for maintenance. You won't have a schedule like you did with the chemical dye. You're now going to be free from emergency touch-ups and last-minute salon visits that can cost you upwards of $350 to $500. But the natural care still does thrive on some rhythm and consistency. So gentle, regular attention using a gentle hair cleanser or natural shampoo, and light oiling of the scalp, especially during colder months, and 2 to 3 minutes of rubbing to stimulate blood flow and nourish the follicles. And for weekly care, just do the botanical rinses like coffee, amla, or clove, depending on how you want to tone your hair. Oil massage before you wash with sesame or coconut, and hydrate with aloe vera, fermented rice paste, conditioners if your hair is feeling dry. You'll do monthly care for your Mendi to add the fiber and the color, and indigo applications if you're doing darker shades. And you'll do that monthly. You'll do seasonal adjustments, which will be increasing oiling in the winter to combat dryness, add cooling herbs like amla in the summer for scalp balance, and your skin is just going to respond to climate shifts just like your hair does. So if you're in a cold mountain environment like I am right now, more acidic type of rinses like amla, and you're going to be saving hundreds of dollars over the year, because $300 per coloring session, that's going to disappear, and now your Mendi and your Indigo or your natural home decoctions are going to cost you less than $100 for the entire year. So most importantly, you'll be investing in the health of your scalp now and managing ongoing damage. And you're going to be managing crises to nurturing the health of your hair, which will be something to enjoy and not something to dread. And as your hair responds and it grows stronger and shinier and you become more vibrant, you're going to have this amazing satisfaction that no chemical quick fix is going to give you. And so now, in closing, we know how our hair is built, from cuticle to cortex to follicles, how chemical dyes work, and not just the superficial change in color, but the disruption that it fully does to our health, how those disruptions extend past the scalp and into our body, and how our ancestors were able to create really beautiful natural methods that we can also use today, and how you can use these natural methods with ease and confidence. So whether you choose to maintain your natural hair or transition to silver, I hope today you're equipped and you no longer need to accept that story that Big Beauty has given you, that we are required to harm our hair. So if you have any questions, or you want to submit any recipes or fails or great successes in the comment section, I would love to hear from you. I'm going to be watching the comment section on this very carefully and responding to all of the comments. And if you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. Share it with all your girlfriends who are equally struggling with this hair coloring disaster. And I look forward to hearing from you. And if you want to drop a comment in the comment section, ready to get rid of the box and join the community, I'll add you to our WhatsApp community, where as a large group we can discuss some of our successes and our fails and our recipes, share those wonderful recipes with one another. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye.